been a park ranger in the Pacific Northwest for nearly 15 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The forest keeps secrets, most of them harmless, some of them not so much. We're trained to explain things: animal prints, strange noises, even missing hikers. But there was one night, deep in late September, when none of my training meant a damn thing. It was the tail end of the season. Most campsites were empty. Trails were quiet, and the air had that crisp, dying leaf scent that told you winter was waiting just around the bend. I was doing my usual perimeter check, riding an ATV along the loop trail that circles one of the less used sections of the park. Not many people go that far in its mostly dense pine and steep drop-offs with only a couple of primitive campsites tucked near a stream. At marker 17B, I saw something strange. A campfire in the distance, way off the trail. I stopped the ATV, pulled out my flashlight, and tried to get a visual. It was flickering, all right, but it was too far off grid. No one should have been back there. The underbrush was too thick. No clear trail, in or out. I figured maybe someone got lost and set up camp illegally. I radioed base. No response. Not even static, just silence. So I started hiking in. No path, just weaving through thorn brush and ankle-deep ferns. The fire stayed visible the whole time, maneuver flickering out of sight, like it was waiting for me. After about 20 minutes of hiking, I broke into a small clearing. The fire was there, still burning, but there was no one around it. No tent, no gear, not even footprints. Just a single metal folding chair and a kettle hanging above the flames. The kettle was boiling. And then I noticed something worse. There was no trail behind me anymore. I spun around, trying to find the route I came in through, but the trees were packed tighter than before. No crushed ferns, no snapped twigs, just untouched forest, like it had swallowed the trail whole. My GPS blinked red, signal lost.
I tried the radio again. Nothing. I looked back at the fire.
The kettle still boiled, lid bouncing slightly from the steam. The chair faced away from me, toward the far end of the clearing. I took a step closer, and that's when I noticed the ground around the chair wasn't natural. It was a perfect circle of blackened earth, like it had been burn-scorched in a way that didn't match the gentle crackle of the flames. Something felt wrong, like I had stepped into someone else's memory. The air didn't smell like smoke. It smelled metallic, thick, like ozone before a lightning strike. I called out, "Hello, Park Service. Is anyone here?" No answer. Just the fire's low hum and the hiss of boiling water. I walked to the kettle, trying to find any sign of who'd lit it. No cups, no packs, nothing. I reached to take it off the hook, and as I grabbed the handle, the fire went out. No wind, no sputter, just gone. The clearing was pitch black in an instant. My flashlight flicked on and I scanned around, but now the chair was gone too. So was the kettle. Just me, standing in a circle of dead earth that hadn't been there 5 seconds before, in a forest that no longer looked the same. The trees weren't just close, now they were leaning in, bent toward me like they'd grown that way for centuries. Then I heard it, a voice, whispering. No, not whispering, chanting. Something low, almost like it was beneath the soil. I dropped to my knees, pressed my ear to the ground, and that's when I heard footsteps. But they weren't above me, they were under me. The footsteps beneath me grew louder, more deliberate, like someone pacing in a tunnel right under my knees. Then they stopped, and the silence that followed felt like pressure, like the air itself was holding its breath. Suddenly, the ground beneath me buckled, just slightly, but enough to make me stumble backward, heart jackhammering in my chest. The soil cracked like ice and a thin line of steam hissed out. I turned and sprinted into the dark, not caring which direction. The forest closed in fast. Branches whipped my face. Roots caught my boots. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Behind me, I heard something following heavy steps, not human. Something scraping against bark, snapping thick branches like twigs. My flashlight flickered, then died. I plunged ahead blind. My only guide was the rising sound behind me breathing, not mine. It's wet, deep breathing that rattled like a throat full of stones. Then the trees opened. I burst into a new clearing, a perfect circle, just like the last. A second fire burned there, identical to the first, same chair, same kettle. But this time, someone was sitting in the chair. I stopped. Couldn't move. The figure looked just like me. Same jacket, same pants, same radio strapped to the shoulder. But the face, it wasn't mine. It was older, pale, hollow-eyed, like someone who had been lost for decades. It didn't speak, just lifted a finger to its lips and whispered, "Shh." The forest listens. And then the fire roared to life, towering 10 feet high in an instant. The light illuminated the trees, and I saw them clearly for the first time. They weren't trees, not really. Their bark was skin-like. Their branches curved like limbs. Eyes opened along the trunks, dozens of them, watching. Then I felt something grab my ankle. I looked down, fingers. Again, reaching from the earth. I kicked, scrambled, tore free, and dove toward the edge of the clearing. And as I crossed that invisible boundary, everything fire, chair, doppelganger, eyes vanished, gone. I was back on the loop trail, just standing there, alone. The forest silent. No kettle, no chair, no clearing behind me. Only my footprints, ending abruptly where I stood. I stumbled back toward the ATV, dazed, filthy, my face scratched and my palms bleeding. The keys were still in the ignition, the fuel gauge still full, like I'd never left. I didn't drive. I just sat there, shaking, watching the trees, waiting to see if anything followed. Nothing did. Eventually, I made my way back to the station. I didn't log anything, didn't write a report. What would I say? That the forest grew eyes? That it built a copy of me by firelight and whispered through the dirt? No one would believe me. Hell, I didn't believe me. I told myself it was exhaustion. Maybe bad mushrooms from that dehydrated meal I'd eaten. Maybe I fell and hit my head. Logical explanations. That's what rangers do, make sense of the wild. But that night, in my bunk, I dreamt of the fire again. Of my twin. Only this time, I wasn't the one watching. I was the one sitting. He was on the outside. And I was in the chair. Morning came, and I couldn't remember driving back. My boots were caked in ash. I don't do perimeter checks anymore. Not in that part of the park. Not since they reassigned the area and quietly removed the trail from the public maps. They called it a maintenance closure, but I know what I saw. And sometimes, when I'm alone in the watchtower, I still hear the kettle whistling. Far away. But getting closer. I was assigned to Rocky Hollow Campground, an out-of-the-way stretch of wilderness mostly known for its scenic views, dense woods, and unpredictable weather. People always talk about the fog up there. Thick as milk, they say. Swallows sound. Warps shapes. Makes you feel like you're not alone. I'd always brushed that off as just another mountain legend, until the weekend shift I covered for Ranger Mackenzie. It was early June, right after the rainy season. Everything was damp, moss-covered, and quiet. I was scheduled for 3 nights, mostly to check on hikers and keep an eye on the fire rings. Simple stuff, but something felt off the moment I arrived. Not wrong, exactly. Just displaced. Like the air itself didn't want me there. The first night passed uneventfully. But the second night, around midnight, the fog rolled in hard faster than usual. One moment, I could see the stars through the tree canopy. The next, my flashlight couldn't even reach 5 feet in front of me. That's when I started hearing it. A slow, rhythmic tapping coming from the woods. I figured it was a woodpecker, or maybe a deer brushing a tree. I radioed the base out of routine, but all I got was static. The tapping grew louder, closer, and then I heard my name. A voice, maybe a man's. Flat, expressionless, calling my name once, then again. But the thing is, no one knew I was out there. I hadn't told anyone I switched shifts, and the only other person scheduled that weekend had called out sick. I stood completely still, trying to convince myself the voice was just an echo, maybe even a trick of the wind. But the fog didn't move like wind-driven weather. It swirled slowly, deliberately, curling around my boots and legs like it was testing my presence. I called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, tapping again. This time to my left. Not fast, just steady. Like knuckles against bark. I aimed my flashlight, but the light just hit white. No depth. No outline. And then, footsteps. Not crunching leaves or snapping twigs, just soft, wet footfalls. Like something barefoot was moving just beyond where the light faded. I backed up. My radio crackled faintly, then cleared for half a second, just long enough for a voice to whisper, "Don't follow it." The transmission cut. I turned and started back toward the ranger cabin. I'd marked the trees with reflective tape on the way out, a trick we used during heavy fog, but now, none of them reflected. The trees were wrong, too close, too many. I walked faster. The tapping picked up speed, matching my pace. Then, the voice again closer this time. "Hey, Ranger Miles. I never told anyone my full name. Not even at this park. That's when I ran. I didn't care which direction. I ran with my hand trailing against tree bark, counting every step. Behind me, the forest echoed with footsteps matching mine exactly. But no matter how far I went, the fog didn't thin. Then I tripped. My flashlight flew. I scrambled in the dark and hit something, not a tree. It was soft, cold, breathing. And then I heard it exhale. I froze, face pressed against whatever I had hit. It wasn't wood or stone. It moved, slightly, like slow, shallow breathing. I recoiled, heart in my throat, and aimed my backup light. It lit up a chest. A bare chest gray, slick skin stretched tight over ribs. Above that, a face, pale and expressionless. The eyes were open, but wrong, too wide, too far apart. They looked straight through me, like it didn't need to see me to know me. And then it smiled. Not with its mouth, but its skin. Folds along its cheeks curled back slowly, revealing lines of tiny, jagged teeth beneath the surface. It leaned closer. I could smell it now, wet soil and mold and something rotted. Then it whispered, "You were supposed to follow." I bolted again, pushing off the thing, stumbling through brambles, branches slashing my arms and face. The fog didn't break, but I kept running. My legs burned, lungs screamed, and still I didn't stop. Behind me, I heard the thing moving not fast, but steady. It didn't chase like a predator. It stalked like it knew I'd get tired. And then I saw something light. Not the fire tower, not the cabin. It was my own flashlight, the one I dropped earlier, blinking weakly on the ground beside a tree. I lunged for it, grabbed it, and the second I died, everything around me went dead silent. The fog pulled back. Like a curtain. I was standing in the middle of the main road. How I got there, I have no clue. But I turned around and there was nothing behind me. No trees, no fog. Just the flat gravel road winding back toward the ranger station. I didn't wait. I didn't breathe. I just walked until the sun started to rise. I made it back to the station just after sunrise. My uniform was shredded, my face streaked with cuts, and I could barely speak. The other ranger on the morning shift just stared at me. He asked if I'd gotten lost. I didn't answer. Instead, I went into the back room, locked the door, and sat on the floor for hours. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink. I just sat there, trying to remember what I'd heard. Later, when I finally stepped outside, the forest looked the same. Peaceful, damp with morning dew, birds chirping, no fog. That was the worst Parthenormal it all was. Like nothing had happened. But when I checked my gear, I found something. A strip of reflective tape, the kind I'd wrapped around a tree to mark my way. It was folded in half and tucked into the front pocket of my jacket. I never got back to the area where I marked those trees. I never should have been able to recover that tape. It had followed me. I put in for reassignment the next week. They gave me a flatter district, fewer trees, no elevation, and no fog. I never said why I requested it. But sometimes, when I'm driving home, I think I see the mist curling along the highway ditches. And just once, I saw a figure standing in it. gray, bare, still, it didn't move. But I swear I could feel it smiling. I've worked as a park ranger for 15 years, stationed mostly around the southern Appalachian trails. I've dealt with drunk hikers, lost kids, bears and dumpsters, you name it. But the incident at Echo Ridge changed the way I look at isolation. That wasn't nature. That wasn't a person. I still don't know what it was. Echo Ridge was one of those campgrounds nobody liked covering. The landscape was beautiful. Sure, steep cliffs, natural stone arches, and deep ravine spud. It was isolated. No cell service. No radio contact once you pass the 4th-mile marker. The station kept it open for overflow in summer months, but even locals said it felt wrong. When I got assigned to patrol there over a long weekend, I figured I'd catch up on reading and enjoy the peace. The only guests were a family of 4 mom, dad, and 2 teenage boys and a solo camper named Morgan, who had pitched a tent away from everyone else near the tree line. On the second night, I passed by the family's site and waved. They looked unsettled. The father pulled me aside and said something had scratched the side of their tent the night before. They thought it was an animal until they found long parallel scratches down their cooler and a small pile of pebbles stacked just outside the flap. Then Morgan reported something even stranger. He said he'd heard whispering under his tent. Not around, not outside, under, like voices rising from beneath the earth. I checked the area and found something I wasn't expecting. A series of old crawlspace vents, almost buried beneath the brush. That part of the park had once been home to a CCC work camp back in the 1930s. The ruins were mostly sealed off, or at least they were supposed to be, but one of the vents had a broken grate. Fresh mud caked its edge, and drag Marxian-sized clawed and deepled directly to it. I radioed the station, but the signal was already cutting out. No surprise. That's what Echo Ridge does. The solo camper Morgan was pale when I returned. He said he hadn't slept, that something moved under his tent in the middle of the night, and the fabric had risen slightly, like breath pushing it from below. I offered to let him camp closer to the ranger post at the entrance of the site, but he refused. Said he needed to see it through. I thought that was strange, but I didn't push him. Later that evening, just after sunset, I decided to investigate the vents again. There were 5 of them marked on the old park map, long since removed from public copies. The CCC had built them for a tunnel network storage, shelter, emergency bunkers, but they were sealed decades ago, except they weren't. I followed the brush line and found another grate. This one had been pried open. Not recently, it looked like it had been widened. The ground around it was packed smooth, almost like something had been crawling in and out regularly. I shone my flashlight inside. The beam caught something metalline, old canteen, maybe, and behind it, what looked like scratches on the concrete walls. That night, Morgan didn't respond to my flashlight check-in. The family was already zipped in tight, trying to ignore the weirdness. But as I walked the trail between sites, I heard a sound that didn't belong. It came from the trees, not an animal, not a person. It was laughter. Not loud, not maniacal, just soft, like someone trying not to be heard but not caring if they were. I froze. The laughter came again, followed by a low dragging sound like something heavy scraping through wet gravel. I turned toward the sound and shined my light. There was nothing. But the trees, they were shaking, just barely. And then I saw the pebbles. Another small pile stacked careful right in the middle of the path I had just walked. I sprinted toward Morgan's tent, heart pounding, flashlight bouncing wildly through the trees. The laughter had stopped, replaced by a low, rhythmic scraping like something dragging nails across stone. When I reached his camp, his tent was empty. The zipper wasn't just open, it had been shredded, torn straight through the middle. Inside, his sleeping bag ripped apart. His pack was there too, but its contents were scattered in a circle around the tent like a ritual. And in the middle of it all, laid carefully, was a pair of boot prints. Barely visible, but I recognized them. Mine. Only I hadn't stepped there. I knew I hadn't. I backed away, and that's when I heard it beneath the ground. A metallic thud. Then another, rhythmic, like something slamming against a door from the other side. I followed the sound back toward the crawl space. My radio crackled to life for the first time all night. A single word. Underneath. It wasn't anyone from the station. It wasn't Morgan. The voice was wrong. Hollow. I knelt beside the vent and pointed my flashlight down. A face stared back. Not Morgan's. Not human. It had no eyes, just dark hollows where they should have been. Its mouth opened, but instead of words, I heard my own voice echoing back. A perfect mimic. Lines I'd said earlier that day. Casual. Harmless. Now twisted. Now mocking. It started crawling upward. Its limbs didn't move like a person's. They folded out, spider-like, elbows bending in the wrong direction. Every inch of its gray skin was covered in tiny indentations like it had been living inside the walls of the earth itself. I fell backward, kicked at the grate, and ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But I heard it. Not chasing. Just crawling. Slowly. As if it didn't need to rush. I didn't stop running until I saw the ranger station's porch light flickering through the trees. I don't remember how I got there, just that I stumbled inside, locked the door, and collapsed onto the floor. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I radioed for backup, barely able to speak. When 2 rangers arrived the next morning, I led them back to the site. Morgan's tent was still there, still shredded. But the drag marks? Gone. The crawl space? Welded shut with rusted iron bolts that looked decades old. Like it hadn't been touched in 50 years. They looked at me like I was losing it. Said there were no signs of anything unnatural. Suggested maybe stress got to me. Morgan was never found. No missing persons report matched his name. No ID in his bag. No license plate on his car. As if he never existed. Weeks later, I found something taped to the bottom of my locker. A photograph faded, taken in the 1930s. A CCC work crew posing in front of the Echo Ridge bunker. In the far left corner, barely visible, stood a man in a pale shirt, arms too long, face blurred. It wasn't a camera blur. It was like he wasn't meant to be there, but he was, watching. That night, I had a dream. I was back at the vent. It was breathing, slow, patient, and I could hear it whispering with my voice again.